Welcome back to another episode of Cactus Quest. I'm your host, Hunter, and in today's episode, I am here with a friend of mine, John Martinez, and we say hello to John, everybody.
Howdy.
And today we are going to be doing some plant maintenance on this Dykia here, and this is Dykia. That's quite a name. Anyway, so we're going to be taking this Dykia. Now, I did a little post about this recently and talked about why I was bringing it back to my greenhouse because of how sharp it is. I was afraid that, my kids might fall on it or my dog might bump into it. And this thing is really like a bouquet of knives. And this is, the Dykias are really pretty plants, but it's not something that you see a lot in the trade. And John is a masterful Dykia grower, and he does something that's quite unique to these. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking this thing and we're going to be cutting back some of the leaves to clean it up, essentially. These are a few of the plants that John has already trimmed in this way, and you can see what I'm talking about. Now, can you tell us a little bit about why you started doing this and what your reasoning for it is?
Yeah, there's a couple reasons for doing this, at least in my opinion. And one thing is it makes it easier to maintain the plant.
Right.
When these plants grow and become larger, when the clump becomes larger than the pot, and you go to water it, you get kind of an umbrella effect, and the water is not getting into the pot. So there's several things you can do to alleviate that. You can either soak the pot, which is fine if you only have a couple plants, but if you have hundreds of them, it's not very practical.
Right.
The other reason is when you've cleared away all the dead leaves from the lower portion of the plant, it makes it easier to weed for your general maintenance. And aesthetically, in my opinion, they just seem a lot more interesting.
Yeah, well, I definitely agree with you. Seeing these like this makes them look incredibly unique and would look great in a pot and would look awesome, like, on your patio or something. Whereas, look at that, right?
Here's one that's a little bit smaller.
Yeah, there you go. Now, you have a ton of these. This one that we're looking at right now, for example, is this one that you grew from seed, or what is the...
Yeah, most of these plants I've grown from seed. This is probably about 6 or 7 years old.
And how long have you been growing Dykia, John?
Oh, probably about 15 years.
That's awesome. Yeah, look at that. And are these are your hybrids, or some of these are true species?
Just about everything here is a hybrid. These
so rad.
These 4 here are species. It's the same plant that you have. These were seed grown, so they're all a little bit different.
Beautiful.
And this is a really nice species also. This is Dykia hebdingii, and this is the blue form.
Dykias are xeric bromeliads in the pineapple family. Some are saxicoles, meaning they grow exclusively out of rocky outcrops, rock crevices, or cliffs, while others are terrestrial, which basically means they grow from the ground out of soil. While most bromeliads are actually epiphytes, just think of tillandsias, the air plants. Dykia belong to the subfamily Pitcairnoideae, which is distinguished by having winged or rarely naked seeds and have evolved several strategies that allow them to thrive in both the arid deserts of South America as well as the moist forests of Central America. And unlike other bromeliads, there are many cold-tolerant species that can handle temps in the teens, making Dykia an excellent choice for the savvy drought-tolerant landscaper. They also hybridize easily, making them a fun plant for the experimental horticulturalist as well.
So basically what you have, if you take a look at the leaf of this is Marnier La Pastelli?
Las Pastoli, yeah.
Las Pastoli.
And that's a species.
So this is a species here, and when you look at the scurfing, is what they call it with Dykias, that is actually trichomes. So it's very, very similar to the flecking and all of the trichomes that you see on, your astrophytums, like your Astrophytum mysterious and Astrophytum myriostigma.
I have to assume it's sun protection mostly.
In Mexico and down in Guatemala, you have a lot of Hectias.
Yeah, Hectias are a totally different genus.
But they're all bromeliads though, is that correct?
They're all bromeliads, yes.
Let's get on back to it. So here we are.
Okay, this particular plant is going to be fairly easy, and the reason is that the spines are straight. There's not a lot of leaves on the plant. A few tools that are helpful is you obviously need a pair of shears. These seem to work pretty well for me, and having a good pair of tweezers also helps. Sometimes if you have trouble on some of the tighter heads, you need something with a little bit more grip than tweezers. A pair of needle nose pliers or something like that seems to work fine. The trick to it is you got to make yourself comfortable, get your workspace all ready to get together. Having a little turntable makes it a little bit easier, and a place to drop your leaves after you've cut them, so your cleanup is a little bit easier. So we'll just get started. The first thing is this plant has been trimmed in the past, you can see in here. So it's going to make it a little bit easier. You know, if you think about a bonsai, the first time you do your trimming, it's kind of a rough trim, and over the years as the plant matures, it becomes easier and easier to maintain. And I find that with these plants, it's kind of the same thing. The more you trim them, the more separation you get with the rosettes, the easier the process is. So the first thing you want to do is find a place to start. And I think for this plant, we'll just start right in here. And all we're doing is we're cutting off all the leaves that have the dried off tips on them.
Right.
And how far you go depends on what you want this plant to look like. And your first cuts are going to be a little bit rough. You'll go in here and do your rough cutting.
Right.
And then we'll go in and kind of clean up after we get most of these leaves taken away. And it really doesn't matter how far you cut them back, because these things grow pretty quickly. They're pretty hardy plants, and one thing that I will often do is I will cut them back. These things have a lateral inflorescence, which means that the flower stalks will come out of the side of the rosette. Mm-hmm. And I find that you can usually cut these back, everything below the most recent rosette.
Gotcha.
So you can use that as kind of a way to gauge how far you want to come back on this plant.
And so we're doing this right now. It is early February. We're in zone 10A, Southern California. So, like, I keep this plant outside. And if you noticed, if we jump back to what we were just looking at on the table, those 4 species that John had there were actually this same species. And if you notice the difference between the plants that are being grown in the greenhouse with that sun protection versus this one, I didn't even recognize them. I didn't realize that they were the same species. But you can really get some pretty beautiful stress colors on these plants. So like doing this, you can do this with this any time of year?
I do it all throughout the year.
Okay. I have found that I could leave it outside year round and it doesn't get, seems to be fine with it.
They're definitely xeric plants. I mean, they can take full sun. I grow these things in full sun in my backyard.
Yeah.
And here at the nursery, I grow them in full sun. I grow them under shade cloth. I grow them under plastic. They're pretty tough plants.
So you can see, like, as he's basically, like, it makes it, I don't know, it gives it some kind of a form. Like, what you can start to see as he's starting to trim these leaves away, the plant starts to take on a stance more so. I don't know if that makes sense, but I kind of feel like they end up looking a little, I don't know. I'm stoked on this. Now, what are the roots like on these? So I notice you have them all in relatively, like, you know, bigger, kind of deeper pots.
These plants, They like a lot of root room.
Mm-hmm.
If you keep them in a small pot and don't pot them up every year, they will stunt. They'll stay a lot smaller. I've got an example of one over here that's been in a pot for about 7 years, and it really hasn't grown much.
Okay, so trip out on this one right here. This is another one of John's open pollinated hybrids, and you've got it in a smaller size ceramic pot. This plant is 10 years old. The one that we're trimming, the one that I have in the video, that one is 6 years old. So to give you an idea, when you put one of these plants, or really almost any of the cactus and succulents or xeric plants that we all like to grow, when you put one of those into a smaller pot, what you're doing is you're essentially doing a bonsai on that plant. And what actually happens, you got to think of it, the plant's going to receive all of its nutrients from the soil. So in a pot with less soil, you just have fewer nutrients available for the plant's root systems. Not to mention, you have less room for the plant to grow roots. Smaller roots means smaller plant. Now, we all love the, plant above ground, but really the plant, its health system, its healthcare system is below ground. And it's just an interesting thing where you could slow down plants. So, for instance, if you're growing plants on a smaller apartment balcony, for instance, and you want to grow plants that have a tendency to get larger, you can put them into smaller pots and stunt their growth so that you actually are able to enjoy that plant, grow it, and just grow it at a much, much slower pace. And if you have the opportunity to move that plant into a new grow space where you end up having more room, you could up pot it and it'll kick back into gear and start growing again.
Is this considered a succulent?
They are xeric plants. They're cam plants. They do use a lot of strategies to survive in a xeric environment, but technically they aren't succulents. They don't have the water reserve cells like a lot of the cactus and succulent plants that a lot of us grow.
Okay.
One thing about these leaves in habitat, what happens is, like a lot of rosette plants, as you get the new growth, the bottom leaves tend to dry up and accumulate.
Right.
And in habitat, what happens is these plants will have a large accumulation in the center here of all these dead leaves. And for us as collectors that want to display our plants, it's not that attractive, but in habitat it's kind of a good thing, because what it does is it acts as a sponge. So when this plant has moisture, whether it's through rain or through fog or whatever, those dried up leaves, they're called remnants, they'll absorb moisture and give the plant the ability to have more access to moisture for a longer period of time.
I guess then there's probably Echeverias, I would imagine, do the same thing. The Dudleys probably do the same thing.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I assume they probably do.
Yeah, there's a lot of different strategies that plants use to have that same impact. Essentially, you look at agave albipilosa. Mm-hmm. Those little tufts. I mean, it grows out of absolute pure rock, vertical cliffs and stuff. And so those tufts will absorb water, and then the leaves guide it down directly to the rosette so it can get to the roots.
Yeah.
Which is kind of an interesting strategy. And you actually have, I'm a big fan, grow a lot of turbinicarpus in my collection, grow a lot of turbinicarpus from seed, and there's a handful. And if you have turbinicarpus, you'll look at them, the ones with the woodier, thicker kind of spines. If you actually read about it, what those spines do as the plant gets older is they kind of fray out, and they act legitimately as a water collection source, that they route it directly to the plant. So it is very interesting to see how different plants that live in dry environments cope with that, and how they have adapted to be able to survive in those climates. Yeah,
you can see that what I'm doing here is really not anything special or anything difficult. It just, I think that the trick is to just get a comfortable workspace, take your time, and have at it.
Yeah, I think that like you know what it is. I was trying to figure out this. I said, oh, it's a stance, but you know what I think what it really is it actually by cleaning the plants up, it like really it's because I was kind of thinking like, oh, it makes them look like caudiciforms, and it does. It kind of gives them a yucca vibe to some degree. But I think really, especially now that you've started to get a little space in between the two rosettes, it's sort of like almost like frames the rosette. It like guides your eyes more to the rosette, so you're not looking at this bushier thing, and it's just, yeah, look at that.
And sometimes the angle to get into this is a little difficult, but you'll find that by doing this, you know, annually or maybe twice a year, as the rosettes grow out and get further apart, it becomes a little bit easier to get in some of these tighter areas. Another way to do it would be to take the plant out of the pot and work from the bottom up. Access to some of these lower leaves is a lot easier, but I find a lot of these plants don't really like their roots disturbed. So if you unpot it and do this and then put it back in the pot, sometimes it takes a little time for them to fully recover.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said for like limiting the amount of things that you do to a plant at once. I had an experience where I repotted and pruned Bursera, and it survived, but it you could tell it really had a hard time dealing with all that. A little too much to contend with at once.
And again, it's, you know, it's all kind of your own personal aesthetic to decide when enough is enough here. I don't think the plants really care. I've cut these back severely in some cases, and they always recover. It doesn't seem to bother the plant. The way that these plants expand is either through stolons, which is in my experience not that common in Dykia. They'll throw out stolons, but they'll also offset with pups, which you're all familiar with, or they'll bifurcate. And you can see here where this head is starting to split, and it'll turn into two heads. I personally think that the plants that grow through bifurcation, as opposed to the offsets, when you trim them up this way, they look a little bit more attractive. The ones that are real heavy offsetters, it just seems that there's too much going on there, and I don't think they come out as nicely as.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, it's, you know, I hate to refer to agaves again, but you know, if you look at like you've got at least here in Southern California, you have one of the landscape staples, which is Agave americana, gigantic agave, pretty agave. The challenge with it is that it's voracious at offsetting, so you have rhizome pups popping out all around it. You'll see them on the side of the freeways, and it's like, if you have something like that, you literally can't even get to it to propagate it. And so I think I'm with you, you know, trying to find something that. So let me ask you this: with it bifurcating, now that's how the plant grows and expands, but with a plant like this, for example, would you be able to take a cutting here and take that rosette and root that rosette?
You can. I don't think I would do it with a plant that's this mature. With a younger plant, sometimes when they start to separate like this, you can actually just take it out of the pot, and by manipulating with your hands, you can split them apart.
Okay.
I've heard of people using a reciprocating saw.
Yeah.
To cut these, and if you have rooting on both sides, you may possibly get. Well, here, let me show you an example.
Do you put anything on the cuts from the leaves, like do you do anything to treat it after? No?
No.
So it just heals. Never had an issue with them healing?
This is an example of a plant this is one of my hybrids, and this is a plant that I split the two heads about probably 6 months ago, and the plant obviously didn't like it. This one is doing pretty well. It's got a good root system on it. This one is struggling, and I think it's going to be okay, but it can take as much as a year for these things to fully recover. You know, if you drastically disturb the roots or separate them.
Now, is this a hybrid with the Marnier?
Yes.
La Posteli?
Las Pastoli.
Las
yeah.
Pastoli.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is pretty. That's scurfing. And it's like the it's interesting too. Like you could tell, obviously, this is the one that is struggling. It's like the leaves are looking a little desiccated. You'd call these teeth, I imagine. The
marginal teeth.
Marginal teeth, yeah. Like they almost look like it ununiform, like wiggly and messy. Where this one actually looks pretty good.
Yeah, it's not as nice as it was before I attacked it, but I think it's going to be okay.
That's cool. All right, gotcha.
So I think that's I think that's taking it down far enough. You know, take a look at it and see what you think, Hunter.
I mean, yeah. I will defer to you. I think it looks great. I think it looks great. I'm stoked on it.
You know, we can maybe take this one off. Or why don't you let me do with the scissors? Go ahead, Hunter. Why don't you just give it a shot? And
here. All right, so let's see. Yeah, you know what? Actually, I think I'm gonna go ahead.
And it's not a bad idea, if, you know, the first couple times you do this, to wear gloves, because your hands do get a little scratched up.
Well, and I will say, if you're not familiar, like if you see this and you're like, oh, this seems like a cool idea, and you go to the nursery somewhere and you buy one of these to do it, I'm just gonna warn you, like these little marginal teeth, they're worse than spines. They're like one of the worst things that you could get got by. They are sharp and hard. So just be forewarned, gloves is a good idea. Let's see. You know, it actually does look semi-succulent.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it does look like that top, you've got kind of a green layer, but that top looks...
Yeah, no, they're definitely
fairly
succulent leaves. I was just saying that you know, true succulents have special cells that are designed to maintain water, and these plants don't actually do that. But they do grow in some of them grow in very arid conditions.
Oof, I just got. Little terminal spine went right into my like my finger pad right there. Look, you can see the little poke.
Yeah,
Oof.
there you go.
You feel it on the back of your head first, actually. It's like your nerves.
Yeah, you do a bunch of these, and at the same time you go home and your hands will be all itchy and scratchy.
I mean, that is like literally. It's like I know that I have a spine in my hand because I'll do something else and I'll go, what was that? That felt weird. And then I'll go, oh, can't see it. Little invisible spine. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good.
When you're making your cuts, you want to make them as perpendicular to the stalk as you can. That way you'll get a much more tighter look when you're done. And everything looks kind of green right now, but obviously over time it'll start to dry out.
Yeah. I think last one. There you go.
All right, you're certified.
Yeah, there you go. I only got poked once. I didn't do the whole thing, so you figure if I did the whole thing, I probably would have got poked a few more times.
Possibly.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Of course. It's Dykia Dawsoni.
Dawsoni. Okay, so
and
let's...
This was a plant that Bill Baker used originally in his hybrid program.
God, that is... So, okay, so check it out, right? You see the teeth? This is actually an exceptional specimen. Look how fat. I guess I don't know what to call it other than a trunk. So look how fat the trunk is, and you can see like what the leaves look like once they dry out. And then this one is cool. It's not even, it's like a little off balance. So it's got the big head, the sort of like bulbous fat trunk that almost rounds out a bit. And then you got a little offset here. You know what this sort of reminds me of? It's like if you took like a pineapple,
a sago palm, and
I was gonna say an Encephalartos horridus or something like that, right? So it almost looks like a Dioon or like a cycad when you do this to it, to some degree. I mean, it's not, but. And what is this one? You said this is a species?
It's Dykia Dawsoni.
Dawsoni. Oh, and by the way, if you guys wanna get some of these Dykias, I believe John sells them from time to time at the Conejo Cactus and Succulent Club. I've been trying to convince him to put some of them on the site. So if there's enough comments of people going, I want some John Martinez hybrids, then we'll throw some on the site for you. I've been doing a lot of videos on the seed sowing and just kind of sticking with that for the last few weeks, but I wanted to show you guys this because I visit John quite a bit, and I've always really admired these things, and it just occurred to me the other day that I don't know anybody else that does what John does with them, and I just kind of felt like I've been taking it for granted. So I thought it's super cool. I wanted to show you guys. I hope you guys thought it was super cool, and until the next time, peace.